Welcome to the Head Shepherd Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Ferguson, CEO here at NextGen Agri International, where we help livestock managers get the best out of their stock. Before we get started, thank you to our two fantastic sponsors for continuing to sponsor this podcast. MSD Animal Health is perhaps better known as Cooper's Animal Health in Australia and for their Allflex range across the world, with a comprehensive suite of animal health and management products. Honiger is a one-stop shop for wool harvesting and animal fibre removal. The Honiger team have a deep understanding of livestock agriculture, backed by Swiss engineering and a family business dedicated to manufacturing the best. We are grateful to our sponsors for their support, helping us bring Head Shepherd to you each week. And now it's time to get on with this week's episode. Welcome back to Head Shepherd. Welcome into 2025. Hope you've had a great one. Hope it's been fun catching up with family and friends. Certainly has been here in New Zealand. This week on the show, we've got Matthew Coddington. Before we get into that, Sophie's written an article around reducing land losses between scanning and weaning, which will be relevant for some people in Australia that are autumn lambers. So we'll hear from Sophie about what you've written.
Yeah, so I actually got asked to write this by a friend and took the opportunity and ran with it. And it's actually a two-part article with the second part coming out next week. So the first one just looks at scanning until birth, really, and what you can do to prevent losses there. Few things. A lot of it comes down to fat and body condition score, obviously. But yeah, just little things like keeping up with your vaccines and a little explanation as to why you should be vaccinating and the losses that can occur if you don't. And then the following week we'll cover from birth to weaning. But yeah, it's always a bit. When you look at your scanning percentage, you always hope your weaning percentage is going to be as close to that as possible. And, very rarely is it that close. So, yeah, whatever we can do to bridge that gap.
Excellent. Yeah, despite decades of work, we've still got that gap remaining, and lots of people, it's a real priority for them. So it's good to explore that a bit further. This week on the show, we welcome Matthew Coddington. Matthew runs Roseville Park. Merino stud, pole Merino stud as well, that many people in Australia at least and beyond would have heard of or would know. Roseville Park Genetics, a big player in the Australian sheep industry, but also exporting outside of Australia. This is a really great chat, talking through a range of things around sheep breeding, but also we sort of explore how Matthew's approach to business, and I think some of the interesting take-homes will be around empowering staff to sort of make their own decisions, and the fact that he can walk out of that business and everyone still knows what they need to do and the sort of rules around not contacting people that are away, so that people are properly empowered to make those decisions. So I thought that was a really great take home. It's also a reminder that's I guess frequent across Australia and New Zealand agriculture, and that's the power of hard work. The stories around how his parents and now him and his wife and kids are all certainly pushing the envelope in terms of making sure they're out there working a lot and getting jobs done. Growing a business through blood, sweat and tears is a common theme, but certainly has a really interesting and good story on growing a successful business. So we'll hook into that podcast now with Matthew Coddington. Welcome to Head Shepherd, Matthew Coddington.
Thank you, Mark.
Awesome, mate. Great to have you along. Obviously there at Roseville Park Roseville Park Merino Stud near Dubbo. We might start as we do with a bit of sort of background, so sort of life at home on the farm, the property, the sheep, the family operation, how all that goes together.
Yeah, okay. The farms, there's sort of 6 farms here, all in a general sort of adjoining area, and they cover around 4,400 hectares. Farms are located 35 South K of Dubbo, and, the beauty of being in Dubbo is we usually find it pretty easy to get staff. You've got a good town there with 45,000 people with all the schools and facilities that you need. So that our location is very good for that reason, and we're close to the Dubbo sale yards and then obviously Fletcher abattoirs as well, only all being 35 Ks away. So it's very good being near that big hub and that big selling centre. And then from Dubbo out west, we service around 150,000 people, all coming in from out towards Burke and all that way. So there's a lot of people move in to educate their families and things like that and look for jobs and work on farms because that's what they know. So we find it very good that way. The other beauty of where we are is the rainfall's evenly distributed through the year. So every month is around 50 to 60 mil of rainfall. So we end up with 650 mil rainfall through the year. And that means, in a perfect situation, you can have green feed all year round. Although the farms are all together and adjoining, they're sort of all varying soil types. No two farms are the same here. Like you go into other areas and for hundreds of kilometres, the soil type's the same. But our soil ranges from sort of basalt, real acidic, 4.2 pH, acidic granite, to basalt, which is 5.6 pH, and we can grow loose on the creek flats and things like that. And the livestock operation principally runs around, obviously, the sheep enterprises. We run around 11,000 sheep. The main sheep enterprise being the Merino stud, obviously, and the Merino sheep we run in conjunction with that. We supply around 700 rams and up to around 4,000 doses of semen to over 470 clients throughout Australia and overseas every year. We also run a Charolais sheep stud. We've got about 400 Charolais stud sheep, not cows. And my eldest son, Charlie, he's got a Poll Dorset stud. And my 15-year-old son, Timmy, he's the youngest kid to ever register a Merino stud, actually, at the age of 11. He's 15 now, and he's got his own little Merino stud, runs around 50 to 100 ewes on that as well. So it's, a full family affair on the farm. Everyone's got a little enterprise and a bit of incentive to come home and do a bit of work on school holidays when they were younger, or come back from their jobs and help out in the busy times. And with our seasons here, they're very variable. So our pressure valve is actually cattle trading. The sheep numbers always stay the same. So in very good years, we can trade up to 1,400 head of cattle. We just buy in, sell, buy preg-tested cows, carve them down, sell them out, try to do quick 3 months turnovers. And there's no emotion with cattle. So when we had the drought in 2017, 18 and 19, we had no cattle. We just ran our core sheep, keep the stud going, and our secure enterprise that we got. And then when the drought broke, started trading cattle again. Currently running around, I think, around 800 head of cattle at the moment. And then around the livestock enterprise, we crop around 1,000 hectares using dual-purpose grazing crops and cereals to fill the silos for supplementary feeding, mainly barley, some oats and some lupins. And then this year we put in around 700 acres of new lucerne, chicories, clovers and pastures, just to keep our new pastures rolling through as well. And I guess the way this all fits together is we got 5 very good staff within our business, and even though we've got lots of different enterprises, all our staff have particular specialised roles and responsibilities, and we try to have a well planned out management plan and calendar, trying to follow, just one major operation happening at a time. Although this week we've got a few different operations going on, with harvest happening, an embryo transfer program starting, and putting seeders in for 1,600 AI. But most of the time, we've got one major operation happening and they're not all on top of each other. So the year's pretty well evenly spread out with different parts of the operation happening at one time. So the other thing is with our staff here, they're jacks of all trades and master of none, doing cattle work, cropping, sheep work, artificial breeding, field days, marketing. We put up to 15 kilometres of fence a year. We're pretty self-sufficient. The only outside contractors we bring in are our harvesters and our shearing team. Pretty well, my team do everything else we need to do on the farm.
Excellent. Pretty lucky to have that crew.
Yeah.
Well, some people claim luck. It's obviously got to build them. You don't just pick them off the tree. Obviously heaps going on there. If we sort of start on the start, and we'll wander through the business as we go. But your father Graham was known for having a really clear vision of the type of sheep he wanted to breed. How's your own philosophy sort of evolved over that time as you've taken the reins and made it your own?
Yeah, so my mother and father were pretty hard acts to follow. They even though the stud was established in 1938, it went from a very little known stud selling probably 50 rams to a few neighbours and things like that to one of the major studs in Australia and influential parent studs in the industry. And they were really hard workers. Talking about staff, Dad had casual staff doing 110-hour weeks. He's 78. He's still farming. He still can't keep staff because no one can keep up to him. They had a massive work ethic, that generation, that we'll never see again. We won't get staff that'll do those hours for a start. But what allowed him to do, my parents did a lot of empire building. They were buying as much country as they could put together at a time. They were putting everything back into paying off those farms and building up the business as quick as they could. Where we initially lived, we were on an irrigation farm near Narromine, actually, but we were landlocked and they couldn't expand. And then we moved out to where we were in the early 80s, and pretty well every 18 months for a while they were buying a farm and building the business up that way. Built up to around 15,000 acres where we are, and other farms in between. Like my father's very renowned for buying and selling farms, and one of the last farms he's just sold was 45,000 acres out at Brewarrina station out there, and he's trying to sell his farm near Geary at the moment, just to take it a little bit easier at 78 and slow down a bit.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. But, to do that marketing and build the business up, they ended up selling around 1,100 rams a year. And they actually used to auction around 600 rams a year, but they did it everywhere. We took rams to Albury and we'd have 100 rams auction there, then 100 to Hamilton and auction them. Then we went to Narracourt, auction there. We had 150 rams we'd auction on farm every year. And then for a while, for about 10 years, we had a stud depot in Western Australia near Coddington, and we had a stud depot over there, and we'd sell around 100 to 120 rams at auction over there. So, and then there was all your multi-vendor sales. We were never home. We were always on the road, always travelling. And that's what it was like back then. We didn't have internet. We didn't have mobile phones. All the business had to be done on the landline pretty well after work. They had to be on the phone till 10 o'clock at night, and back on at 6 o'clock in the morning to ring people. And, they were among one of the first people to get into measurement as well. They were the first founding members of some of the original sire evaluation programs in 1989 when they started, and they've always been sort of involved in sire evaluation. And then when artificial insemination, laparoscopic AI started in 1982, they were the first people into that. Embryo transfer followed in 1989. I think they were in the first 2 or 3 studs that started embryo transfer. So they're early adopters of, new technology and trying to build the stud up as in the best way that they could. And then, they became the first people then that brought the Dooney sheep into eastern states of Australia. They brought them in with our vet at the time, Greg McCann, and we were running something like 1,500 recipient ET programs to build the Dooneys up. We were doing 14-day programs and rolling through, just building those numbers up. I think first year he spent around $500,000 just on embryo transfer, and then we had a ram sale out the end of it and sold $600,000 worth of Dooneys at the first ram sale. The other thing about the Dooney was they were the first breed of sheep to come into Australia and had to be all fully pedigreed, all had to have full data and measurement on them. And in doing that, they actually struggled with the breeders to keep that system going in Australia. So then my mother ended up chairing the Dooney Association and developing all the bylaws and the constitution for the Breed Society. And then they actually also had to bring in assessors. Independent assessors would come to your farm and grade the Dooneys up. And they could only use a ram that had the right amount of data, a certain index. And then above that, he had to have what they called AA rating. So he had to be physically correct and meet the breed criteria to be used in a stud. So that sort of opened their eyes to, that type of genetic selection and data measurement that was able to be done within sheep. And that only happened around the year 2000, really. So only 24 years ago, this sort of information came to hand. Before that, any data we did was it was like the old ram power type index where you'd run your rams through and you'd fleece weigh them and you'd body weigh them and you get a micron test and it'd be all within flock, and half your rams would be high for fleece weight, half would be low, half would be high for body weight, half would be low, half would be above the micron and half would be below. So when you're trying to sell 1,100 rams, 550 of them were below average. And people would be wanting to see your data, and it'd be 130 for fleece weight, 130%, say, for fleece weight. And another one would be 80, and they'd always want to pick the 130, obviously.
Yeah.
But, you and I know a lot more about genetic evaluation now. We were picking the singles. The system didn't pick twins out of maiden ewes or anything like that. So we were just picking the biggest single lambs with the biggest fleece weights and the biggest body weights. And the industry was sort of, in a way, pushed that way because it was all we had at hand if we wanted to use measurement. And so apart from sire evaluation and that ram power index, the only benchmark tool we used then was to promote the stud was to do a lot of showing. So, again, back on the road, no sport on weekends, go to the local show or go to Victoria 15 hours away and do a show and show the sheep. And, again, the biggest, woolliest, finest ram won the ribbon and that was it. But, it built our reputation up and our name up and got us out there and got rams onto farms and things like that we could get going forward with to promote the stud and grow it. And that was all we had, at that time to utilise it, the information that we had. So the vision and the type in the Merino stud, I guess, did always revolve around, why we've always been influential stud. And my father always, even though he was doing the things he did, he always had this innate ability to predict where markets would be in 5 to 10 years' time. And I guess that's why I could see the Dooney had an influence coming into Australia. But in the end, the Dooney made a big impact at the time. It hit the right situation because we hit that millennium drought. Wool prices were depressed, meat prices went up. But what it did, it opened all the Merino breeders to what you could actually develop a pole Merino sheep to look like. And it actually kicked us all into gear and made us develop the pole Merino in Australia a lot quicker with the introduction of that Dooney and the system that they introduced when they did it. And I guess within all that type within our Merino stud, we've got what our clients call the Roseville Park type wool. It's waterproof, it's bright, it's white, it's around 18 micron and a fine medium. And being fine medium, we've got clients from basically Launceston to Longreach. We sit in that real niche where we try to sell our rams into all different, environments and regions of Australia. The other thing about when I first came home in the early 90s was we had a sheep classer there, and through the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s, they wouldn't use a ram unless it cut the old 40 pound. Now, 40 pounds is 18.2 kilos of wool. So every sire we had was cutting 18.2 kilos of wool, and they were doing it between sort of 18 and 21 micron. They were weighing around 130, 40 kilos as well. But I think the other thing that was different back then, we didn't have this extreme climate we've got now. We had 30 pretty reliable seasons where we could go and put a crop in when we wanted to. We could graze it when we wanted to. We didn't think about it. We could stock our farms up, run to the hill. Fertiliser was $100 to $180 a tonne. So even when it didn't rain, I remember my father was putting fertiliser out 3 years in a row, and I could see the fertiliser on the ground from the year before. And we went through a dry spell through to 1998, and it rained. And by 6 weeks later, we had barley grass over the handlebars of the motorbike because he had 4 years of fert sitting there. That was the thing. Like, we could run stock, we could feed stock. Our fertility in the sheep was never an issue. It didn't matter if they cut 40 pound of wool. We throw a ram out and easy get 120% lambs. I remember he sold a ram once, and the guy said, I don't need him till March. And Dad goes, oh, well, can I use him? And the bloke goes, yeah, you can use him. And this ram, he cut 18.2 kilos of 18.2 micron wool, and we'd sold him for $22,000. He threw him in 400 ewes, and that ram got 260 something lambs. And that's just because the seasons, the pasture production, the fertilizer regimes, imports cost nothing back then. So, we were able to manage a lot of problems in sheep just from sheer nutrition and feed and inputs.
Yeah.
The whole game's changed now, and then eventually, things change. You get mobile phones, you get computers, we get different systems in place. And slowly through the time, my wife and I bought the Merino Southern half the farms off our family in 2005. And I'm going, this is bloody pretty hard act to follow. Actually, some clients were going, you're going to stuff this up. You're going to mess this up. You're going to send this stud backwards. So I just came in at actually a very good time in the industry where, I'd been involved in sire evaluation, but the sheep CRC was starting up. So I was able to get on some of the advisory groups in the sheep CRC. We were able to get rams into the information nucleus flock that started developing the genomics information. We remember that thing they had in the late 90s, the Merino Validation Project.
Yeah,
we had the Merino Validation Project starting out, so I got involved in that. We were doing worm egg counts. We were doing eye muscle scanning, fat scanning, doing some early body weights and things like that. And that was the Merino Validation Project, I'm sure, was running for about 6 years before the introduction of sheep genetics. So it was all the Merino Validation, the sheep CRC, were all the workings behind what then became our sheep genetics, which was launched in 2008, I think it was, roughly.
I think that's about right, yeah.
Yeah, so, we've only really had that technology since 2008, which is not a long time. So before that, we did what we could with what we had to get information out to people that they wanted. And, since then we got this mobile phone, a tablet, all this information at our fingertips of what we can do now. We didn't have then. I remember having a bag phone, the old Motorola bag phone that used to ring people. It was the first mobile phone about 1992 or something. And then, so all these developments came into the start of sheep genetics. And actually, at the time, sheep genetics were interviewing for grower representatives to go onto their advisory group. Anyway, they wanted a couple of merino breeders, a couple of terminal ones, maternal, and some different breeders from across the industry. So actually, back then you had to go for an interview, went down to Sydney to the MLA headquarters and went for an interview for this position on the Sheep Genetics Advisory Group. So it must have been around 2006-07 before it was launched. Ended up doing 2 terms on that Sheep Genetics Advisory Group. And what was amazing about that was we actually got to help develop the business plan, the extension rollout, the marketing rollout, all within sheep genetics. And behind that, our committee got to talk to all the best researchers and geneticists in the industry. And I spent probably 5 years in sheep genetics just before the launch and then after the launch. And what that enabled me to do was to be able to do what my father was able to do by talking to those researchers and geneticists. I was able to see 5 to 10 years into the future. We were seeing new technology was about to come on board and some of the new traits they were going to measure, and we could get in early and do some of that trial work. And that kept us current with the industry and evolved with the industry as it changed. And yeah, it was pretty good experience, pretty good learning thing for me, because I'd never actually done uni or anything. I basically
Too busy working by the sound of it, mate.
Yeah, too busy working, no sport. Basically did the HSC, finished year 12, went jackarooing for 2 years on a station, on another Merino stud, and had a great time. Met my wife there, met a lot of good mates there. Had 2 years to party, and then that was it. Back to work, never a day off again. So it was good to get out into this whole new sort of atmosphere of people thinking outside the box, really. Things we'd never heard of or seen, and information. Because, the biggest difference since my father was breeding sheep is that, to be honest, 80% of the most important traits in breeding sheep we can't see.
That's a good, yeah. Yep.
And we never really have bred a sheep until recently that existed before, because it doesn't look like the traditional Merino used to, because it's not anymore. And that's because of the genomics and the massive develops in sheep breeding values and the genetic parameters. Like, now we know it's a twin. We know the genetic parameters, the heritability is behind it. Like, the predicted breeding values now, so more accurate. We got rams there with 96% accuracy on traits and things like that now.
Yeah, that's a great point around the value of volunteering into some of those committees and getting access to, obviously it's time off farm, and a lot of people would view that as a kind of lost time, but there's so many positives from getting involved in research, for sure. You've talked about sheep breeding, like training for the Olympics. What does that mindset mean in practice day to day?
I guess it's what we all do. It's about the 1%ers, isn't it? You got to get the mating decisions right, the management plan right to avoid bad weather events, joining or lambing, getting the nutritions right. It's very important because, 75% of a sheep's condition score is attributed to nutrition, and 25% of that's attributed to the genetics. So it doesn't matter how good your genetics are if you don't manage your stock properly. And that's why we do push what we do as much as we do with our pastures and our stocking rates and things like that. It's also about measuring and marketing our product for our clients and keeping our genetics current to the market, as we've discussed. And I'm a very structured and planned thinker. The more time I have to plan and manage decisions, the better. But unfortunately, farming doesn't always give you that liberty. But we've got procedures and protocols in place on the farm for our joining, for our lambing, for our weaning, for measuring data, for shearing and fleece weighing and muscle scanning and doing genomic samples, DAG scores, worm egg counts, you name it. We actually were able to bring in standard operating procedures and protocols for those things when we did bring in some outside help. So they're all there. And it all helps with that succession stuff. If I'm ever not here, or if I'm away at those meetings, which are very important to our business, the show goes on. I'm not a micromanager in my business. I give my staff a lot of autonomy to make decisions, and you get good buy-in from doing that. You're there every day watching how they do every little thing and picking them to bits. You don't have staff there very long. I've got staff that have been here 15 years now, and they just know I can. And that we actually have a policy. If I go away, or if they go away, I could be gone for 2 weeks. They don't ring me and I don't ring them. We have a very good communication plan of what's to happen while I'm away. And we actually enjoy the fact that we can all go away and not have to talk to anyone for 2 weeks on the farm. We've got that trust, and they've got that autonomy to be fluid and make decisions on their own account. And they've got enough experience, and we've got that. It's because we've got that procedures and we've got that management plan in place that they're able to do it comfortably.
That's awesome to hear. Did that take a while to evolve, or is that takes some strong leadership
as well? But
yeah,
we've got our management calendar in place where they know this happens at this time of year and that happens at that time of year. And when we do this job, so when we're doing a genomic sample, we're doing a DAG score and a breed trinkle score. We're doing some other things coupled with some different measurements. Or when we're weaning, we have to do that body weight, and then we're doing the six. We've just got things they have to do at certain times, and everyone just knows it.
Yeah, perfect. Your accountant once said you're very good at quitting. What did he mean by that?
Yeah, he said it to me, and I nearly sort of told him to get jiggered. What are you calling me, a quitter?
Yeah, one thing to wind up an Australian male.
I wasn't sure myself at first, and it was a bit sort of offended. And I went, well, "You calling me a quitter?" And he goes, "Yeah, well, I'm calling you a quitter in a good sense." I go, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, what we do, we have a management accountant, so we go in quarterly and we spend half a day with our accountant, and it's also more like him being also a business coach. We do talk about the farm, the staff, people scores, how everyone's feeling at different times. In the last quarter, how are people's stress levels, people scores, how do we feel about the financials for that quarter and things like that." So, as we're doing all that, and then even go into marketing, communication stuff and things he'd pick up off other people. So we found it a real valuable thing to do this business accounting service with him. And he dealt mainly with farmers, so he knew our industry quite well. But, as we're going through sort of some things we bought and sold, we bought a sheep handler and we didn't like it. We bought an air seeder. We didn't like it, so we resold it. We bought a side-by-side, and in the drought it sucked dust in, and you're in this cloud of dust and couldn't see where you're going, so I flipped it. And that's what he meant about being a good quitter. He just read this story, I think, came out of Harvard University, and this how top entrepreneurs, rather than buy something that they're not happy with and then spend money on it trying to get it right, or spending hours trying to fix it and make it so it works to just justify the purchase was right. If you're not happy with it, flip it, piss it off, and buy something that does suit your operation. And we do a lot of things like that, because when we are trying to be early adopters of technology, there's not many people you can get advice off. So you go out and buy the new shiny toy, and you find it takes 40 times as long to push sheep through it. Some sheep handlers like pushing sheep into a wheelie bin, to be honest. I'll get those little buggers in there. Yeah. So if it doesn't work, don't try to cut the sides off it or change your lead-up race or do this and do that and get a better dog, an electric prodder. Get rid of it and buy the next thing until you find something that works. Like, even with our sheep management software, we tried every brand of sheep software until we got stuck on our Breed Elite stuff that we're using now with our sheep software systems for all our measurement. So, that's what he meant about being a quitter in a nice way, basically. If you don't like it, flip it, move to the next one. Don't spend countless hours and money trying to get something to work if it's not going to work ever 100% for you.
I reckon that's number 2 insight from this interview. So everyone listening should really write that one down. That move on, accept the failure, and get on with it, because we make decisions with our emotional brain, and then our rational brain has to try and make sense of it. But but you can just move on if it's not going to work.
Nearly a bit of ego there, isn't it? Or barbecue talk. Everyone said this new shiny toy was going to work, and you can't get it to work.
Obviously, you mentioned a lot of fencing, and I'm assuming you'll be always chasing efficiency, just laneways and whatever. What sort of principles guide your decisions around farm development as you're continuing to evolve the business?
Yeah, I guess I love fences, and we do have pretty good fences. I love dividing paddocks up and love laneways, fencing off waterways. And I was at a client's place not long ago driving around with him, and the fences got pretty ran down. He goes, "I don't know what to do. We've got to, do 50 kilometres of fencing and this and that." And I said, "Look, we budget on anywhere in a bad year. where we're trying to cut budgets, we'll do only 5 kilometres of fencing a year, but the last couple of years we've been doing 15 kilometres of fencing a year. Now, you put that over 10 years, suddenly you've got 150 kilometres of fence done on your farm, and it happens pretty quick. So just start on your laneways, start on, your boundaries and things like that, and just start, It adds up very quickly. So I guess that's fencing. I love that part of our farm development. But the principles that we're guided by is, does it have economic viability? Will it help? Will it help the business? Will it help? So, for instance, we were talking about our position. So, will it help us gain market access? We've got good supply chains, access to local markets, and that ensures, financial success. Will it allow us to increase our stocking rate? Will it help us increase daily weight gains and turn stock off faster? Will it improve our grazing systems where we could rotate through more paddocks and takes them longer to get that back to that paddock for, worm management? The other thing, as I've mentioned, we do a lot of enterprises, and I actually find that a strength to our business. So another decision around farm development is, does it give us diversification? My son goes away to school, and he goes to a different school to where the other kids went before they grew up. But I was down there talking to all the fathers. I didn't know one father at this school. They're all farmers, but thought I'd definitely have to know a farmer. But when I went into this room, they were nearly all croppers actually, and in very good reliable cropping areas, canolas and good cereal crops and things like that. And they said, "Oh, what do you do, mate?" I said, "Oh, I do sheep, cattle, cropping, bit of this and a bit of that." I said, "Oh, I don't know how you can do all that. We just do one thing and do it well." I said, "That scares the crap out of me. Like, you've got all your eggs in one basket. Like, yeah, I do cropping, I do cattle trading, I do sheep, commercial sheep. We try to do a bit of everything to diversify our income streams. And, in 2022, cattle were through the roof. Wool was very good in 22-23, and then it went off. And then the sheep meat prices went down, so the cropping's come up. So you actually can keep a reasonably secure income stream coming through if you're very diversified. So, yeah, our farm development is very driven around, can it help us diversify what we are and help us run all the different enterprises we've got. And obviously beyond that, with the stock we do, animal welfare, we've got to ensure that our livestock are raised in a humane way that promotes their health and well-being. And our on-farm infrastructure, we've just done a massive big sheep and cattle yard complex on the farm, costing around $500,000. We haven't put the shed up over it yet, so that'll add a fair bit more to it. But, it's about building that state-of-the-art sheep and cattle yard facility that keeps our staff and animal welfare really good, but we can couple that with new technology for data collection, labour-saving devices to make our staff more efficient. Because this is the other thing, staff aren't getting any cheaper. So as we expand or ramp our stocking rate up, I actually need my staff to become more efficient. We can't have that leisure of just throwing more staff on because back in my dad's day, he just threw another jackaroo on or something.
Another 100 hours a week for a jackaroo.
Yeah. So, another 100-hour week, you can get some $15,000 a year. You can do pretty efficient there. But now, we instead of buying, putting on another staff member, we buy a bigger air seeder, a big boom spray, better sheep yard facilities, better shearing sheds, better infrastructure. And they're there for a long time. So, the payback's very good on that. And then also our crop selection in farm development, we choose crops that are well suited to, our climate, soil conditions, and we choose crops and pastures that will fill our feed gaps. So we can always have feed in front of our stock for the, when we're weaning, we want rocket fuel. When we're cattle trading, we want rocket fuel. There's a lot of times now, actually, we've got to put our ewes into Jenny Craig paddocks. We need, otherwise, coming into joining, holy smokes, our ewes were fat. We actually had to lock them up Otherwise, we actually struggled. We'd have conception troubles because our 4.5 condition score. So
yeah,
we're trying to even work that. And then obviously technology. We embrace advancements like your precision agriculture, drones, automated equipment to boost the productivity and efficiency rates across the different farms that we run.
Cool. We'll swing. I think this will be the last question around the stud stuff, but it is a massive breeding program, and you already mentioned your 1600 AIUs and ETs and lots of stuff going on. How do you, obviously you're chief in charge of selecting who gets to stay, who gets to go. How do you sort of filter out what's important when it comes to the selection amongst all that data and decision making you need to do and all those different client, I guess, geographies that you're working with?
Yeah. I guess this is what I try to discuss with sheep breeders and geneticists a lot as well. I think a lot of people get too carried away with low genetically heritable traits that don't make a massive difference to their bottom lines. And it doesn't. So I saw Rams out to Burke, and he's not worried about dag or worm out there. But someone in Western District Victoria, that's nearly their number one criteria. Yet the bloke at Burke sees the guy in Western District's worried about dag and worm. And he's going, I've got to watch the dag in my Rams. And I'm going, really, Burke? Shouldn't be really worried about some other things like, can they walk 7 kilometres to water and carry that fleece to the shed? So I think the first thing we need to do is just realise what are our key profit drivers in our environment we live in. And then the second thing, probably the first thing we do before that is let's develop a long-term breeding objective. Let's sort out all those little irrelevant things and let's get down to what's really going to drive your turnover and your flock to be at its best performance in your environment. So let's set a breeding objective and let's apply that to what we need to achieve to get that desired outcome that we're going to need for our sheep and our clients, I guess. And then, the other thing within that, the genomic flock profile has been a game changer for a lot of our clients as well, because there is a lot of new information always out there. And, I was working with a guy in Victoria and had a massive mob of sheep, had 5,000 new Augusta class every year. For that, he needed around 100 to 120 replacement rams a year. So he decided to breed his rams himself. So to pick the size, 1 year he wanted fleece weight, 1 year he wanted fertility, 1 year he wanted muscle, 1 year he wanted fat, 1 year he wanted wet. And sometimes to find the traits he wanted, I was actually going to other studs to find rams to do the job he wanted. But it was frustrating because we were going all over the place, higgledy-piggledy. So what we did, luckily his wife came from a dairy background and was used to data and a bit of, single trait focused stuff. So first thing we did was got a genomic profile, work out the strengths, work out your weaknesses. Then let's work out a long-term breeding objective. And you know what? It just gave them a formula, a plan. Every year we knew, right, these are our strengths. We don't have to worry so much about these. We might need to work on some of these traits. Let's focus on them. And in another 5 years, do another genomic profile and see if we're heading that way. That's been a massive thing for clients. And it's been able to simplify the whole process and formulate, which I love. I love structure and planning, as I said. So it was doing my head in the way we were doing it before. And, just streamline something. And we've moved in a direction we can track and quantify that direction. So, and it's the same as what we try to do in our flock on the farm, obviously. But the beauty for us, we've got that tool now called Mate Cell. And I guess for people out there, there are people out there that don't know Mate Cell, because I was talking to some people the other day who hadn't heard of it. But
there'll be plenty that don't know.
Yeah, so Mate Cell, the beauty of it, we went through around 5,000 ewes. I picked out 1,600 ewes we're going to artificially inseminate. those ewes had to fit our type, our vision, our type, our wool type, all that. Then we went through the 1,600 ewes and we scanned each ewe and sent all its data to Henry Hickson, Next Gen Ag. And then I told Henry, these are the 7 sires that I want to use over these 1,600 sheep. Puts it all into the system, and we can actually, with my breeding objective, predict the progeny, I guess, breeding value and the outcome of that joining. So that's next level things that we can now do as stud breeders. So before I've even joined, I can nearly predict what my 25 drop lambs data is going to average out at. And you can move your whole stud very rapidly into a very good direction if you, again, got that structure, that long-term breeding objective.
Yeah, 100%. If we move sort of on to, I guess, maybe a bit about your interest personally, and you seem to be running a fair few workshops, field days. I see you teaching young judges days, that sort of stuff. You seem to enjoy that aspect of agriculture. Where does that interest come from?
Yeah, I guess you've heard a bit about my little childhood. We're in the middle of harvest at the moment, and it's 37, 38 degrees yesterday. My 23-year-old son, he's been working away on different farms for 5 years, and he's came home to help us this year on the farm, back in the business, which is great. But, we've got 2 headers going. One header had gone up the road and started harvesting into a paddock. And then we've got a really big, second biggest John Deere header there. It had finished off another paddock and needed an escort to the paddock where this other header was working. So the header driver goes, can I borrow his son? He's going to drive my ute. Well, this ute is one of those old Ford Falcon B&S Bandit type utes that we used to drive when we were 18. The big bull bar of 50 aerials off the front, the Bundy Rum Mad Flaps, the V8 low set, black ute with an oversized sign and flashing lights on it. And I went, Charlie, you reckon you can drive this big girl? He goes, yeah, I'll get into that. Anyway, I said, you got to escort this bloke. So I talked to him on the 2-way and, let him know if any trucks are coming or anything. Yeah, no worries. And I said, and the chaser bin's behind you and I'm behind all of them, so I'll just follow. And then I can bring everyone back to get more vehicles. Yep, no worries. Driving up the road, drives into the paddock, drives this V8. It's only about 10 centimetres off the ground, drives it all the way into the paddock, onto the stubble. And he's parked this V8 thing on the stubble and everyone's just ran at him screaming. The bloke with the fire cart's gone towards him. He goes, what's going on? And they're all yelling at him, mate, you cannot drive a bloody ute like that on the stubble. It's got a catalytic converter. You're going to start it on fire. And we're all just screaming at him, yelling at him. And he's freaking out. He's trying to get this thing off there and the wheels are spinning. And then it's got cooked and stalled and we couldn't start it. The header driver's cracking it. Oh, me bloody pride and joy. Anyway, I'm thinking, you know what? This is how people used to treat us when we were young. Like you actually never got taught anything. People just ran at you yelling. And you learn from trial and error. Like I remember my first day jackarooing. We drenched 1,200 sheep in a 7,000-acre paddock, and the overseer walked up and down beside the race, screaming at me and the other guy whose first day it was, go faster, drench those sheep faster. That one spat it out, you useless bugger. Drench it again. And he's just screaming at us. It's like we were in boot camp or something. And that's how we were brought up. And when I saw everyone running at my son yesterday, I'm thinking, that's the first time he's experienced that. And then I went, we've all got to take a step back and a deep breath and go, hey, Charlie, you can't drive on stubble with that sort of you'll light the paddock on fire. Yeah. And he goes, and this is the typical Gen Z, he goes, I don't know why the hell he's bought a vintage car to a bloody harvest job. Why isn't he driving a diesel Toyota like every other normal bloke? And I went, yeah, righto. we wouldn't have answered it like that when we were that age. We'd probably got a clip under the ear or something. But, you know, I was brought up by you're just expected to know. No one taught you. So I wanted to change that cycle, and I've been trying to pay it forward, you know. So when I was young and involved in soil evaluation, there was a guy called Alan Casey who was with New South Wales DPI, and he saw what I was doing with soil evaluation and the industry and trying to get into that technical and scientific. You know, it always just quizzed my mind. I was just trying to learn as much as I could. I was just hungry for information and a real sponge when I was young. I just couldn't do enough. Even though I didn't go to uni, I couldn't do enough courses, read enough books, learn enough about our industry, get involved with everything I could. Anyway, Alan Casey saw how keen I was, and I was only, let's say, early 20s, and he's grabbed me to help the DPI develop a ram breeding and selection manual using visual measured data in the early 90s. So DPI wanted to basically put out big modules. You could fill them in with different sheep selection things and that. But what we did with those modules when we developed it, he got us to run a heap of events called Train the Trainers. And suddenly here I am, a 20-year-old kid who'd never been to uni, standing up teaching university lecturers, TAFE teachers, secondary teachers on how to teach their students about what was modern sheep breeding and selection back then, but to try and bring the real scientific jargon out of it, to bring it back down to students' terms so they could understand it. And I was glad I was given that opportunity to teach people then. I loved it and thrived on it. And then through that, I was then given opportunities to represent the wool industry and leadership programs. And they taught me a lot about communication, leadership. I did one with New South Wales farmers that taught us about even lobbying governments and making change. And even taught us a lot about marketing. But you were with other industry, so we'd be there with oyster farmers, banana farmers, you name it, across the whole industry. And they were great experiences when I was young, which they don't do enough of now. And then obviously in 1996, I learned to laparoscopic AI. And the same thing happened. The vet didn't want to teach me, but I was adamant, I was dogged. I said, when you're at home, you're going to teach me how to AI. Because it's not illegal. You can teach me that. I don't have to be a vet. I can AI my own sheep on the farm. So basically, it's righto. So I went and bought all the gear. You know, he said it was going to cost $20,000. I think I got the gear for about $7,500 back then. Got all the gear, got in the workshop, welded up some AI trolleys, designed them actually that they were so good that the other vets ended up copying them. But what he did, on the first sheep, he goes, look down here, and he's got me looking into the laparoscope inside the sheep. And he goes, see that? And I go, oh, that little thing that looks like a raw prawn? He goes, yeah, that's it. That's where you got to AI the sheep. And I went, right. He goes, you're on your own. And that first day, I AI'd 30 sheep, not knowing if I was putting it into the small intestine or the bladder. Thank God he hadn't moved the laparoscope, and I actually was looking at where I was put it into the uterine horns. So anyway, I thought, bugger this. In the next 2 years, for every AI embryo transfer program I did, I got a different vet to come. And I actually learnt how to AI off 7 different vets. And because the other thing about vets, they all learnt to AI around 1982. We've got this generation of vets now, they're all 60, 70 years old. But they were secretive and they wouldn't show the other vets their technique. So even though they were sort of putting it in the same spot, they all use slightly different techniques of getting in and doing the system. So I actually learnt how to AI off 7 different vets and ended up tweaking this system that I could AI a sheep in 25 seconds. So it was sedated, in and out, back in the paddock 30 seconds later, basically. And since then, basically you need 1,000 sheep to be proficient at AI. Where does a vet get someone that's going to lend them 1,000 sheep to learn on? So since then I've gone, you know what? So every year, even this year, I'm going to have 3 vet students that will be teaching how to AI. I've got the cameras, so we can see on a camera where you're meant to put it. We've got a TV screen with the camera there, and we go through all of the semen collection, semen assessment, diluting, and all of that stuff. So since then, pretty well every vet in Eastern Australia under the age of 45 has learned to AI sheep or get their numbers up at Roseville Park. Set up next to us, get your numbers up, just go for it. And it's just paying it forward, you know. And I do all that junior judging stuff just because I guess when I was young, there was a guy taught us that system, and that system is just very, again, structured, and it's a system that you use when you're judging. And to be honest, a lot of judges these days don't know the system, and we're just trying to, I guess, keep that legacy alive. That, you know, if you're going to do it, there is an etiquette or just a way you can do it quickly, efficiently, and neatly, and look like you know what you're doing. So, yeah, I love teaching young kids and my kids' friends and vets. And AI, when we do start that in a couple of weeks, just a big party. We just have a ball. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. On the similar theme, but you're doing a bit of on-farm research that you carried out at Roseville Park through the RD tax incentive. What does that look like?
Yeah, so again, trying to separate yourself from other studs. We all breed rams. We all say they're the best. We all, you know, what I'm trying to do is trying to find a unique selling point. And I guess for us, what it was farmers doing research for farmers. And every year we put out a newsletter, and it's about a 50-page newsletter with all the newest information we can find in the industry. So we make it more than an educational magazine rather than a spruik magazine, I guess. And that's how I try to separate ourselves from other studs. But within that, you know, we've done some really good collaborations with Sydney University, the University of Western Sydney, the MLA donor company. First thing we did was we did a bit of drone mapping, pasture mapping, which predicted feed on offer and biomass from flying a drone over paddocks. And then probably the biggest project that we did was the walkover weighing using remote technology with a PhD student called Greg Sawyer from Sydney Uni, who did that in conjunction. He was overseen by Luciano Gonzalez, who's the main sort of technical guy within Sydney Uni doing on-farm tech. But what we were doing through the drought in 2018, we were doing walkover weighing. And so we could track daily weight gains on the ewes in real time. And that information was being sent by the internet back to Sydney Uni. So as a sheep walked over a crate at Dubbo, the real-time weight was being sent back to Sydney Uni, and then they could apply their algorithms to work out daily weight gains, feed intake, actually the amount of methane. They had an algorithm there that would have been able to predict roughly what methane that sheep released that day as well. And behind that, we could sort of track. We did it with ewe lambs that we joined as well. So we were trying to do minimal monitoring at lambing. So we would have a ewe, say, weighing 68 kilos leading up to lambing, and then she wouldn't present for 2 days. And next time she presented, she'd be 60 kilos, say. So we could predict that ewe lambed on that day. So we could put a birth date in against a ewe with a lamb. And then within that, we'd bring the lambs in, mark them, put an EID tag in them, and then we'd run them through a pedigree matchmaker type system with it as well. And then we looked at, because we've been doing 6 months shearing for 10 years, we looked at metabolism effects on that as they were walking over and that was a great management tool in the drought, actually, 6 months shearing. Sheep just stayed fatter for longer, conceived more lambs, reared more lambs, things like that. But then my really exciting thing that we really wanted to push out of that information was the epigenetics. Again, I don't know if we've got to explain that to listeners, but we could do another podcast on genetics.
Yeah.
But I wanted to see the impact of a lamb born out of a ewe lamb in a drought. So my principle behind that was I would assume that a lamb born out of a ewe lamb in a drought would actually be a better feed converter for the rest of its life. And if you look at epigenetics, there's history coming out of the Dutch famine, I think, wasn't it, Ferg?
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about that. To have some airtime here, but
we're running out of time, so we better not. But
yeah. So we looked in the epigenetics vet. So yeah, we've done some really cool research, and then we've done the semen predictors work tied. So basically, when we're doing AI, we're doing a uterine tone score. It's like your visual scores on sheep, 1 to 5 for uterine tone. An internal condition score. So when we're on side, we're looking at the internal condition score, a score of 1 to 5. And then we're looking at semen timing, semen quality and all of those things, and then applying that to research with the Sydney Faculty of Veterinary Science that we're doing. Now, within all of that research, there's a way, I guess, what we've done, we've employed a specialist tax accountant, and he advises us on research and development tax advisory. And there's a government incentive called the government R&D tax incentive. Basically, that allows a legitimate business with legitimate R&D projects that run to be they can be eligible for a tax offset of up to 43.5% or 18.5% above the company tax rate. So basically in our reported projects, they're reported in our newsletter. We've got all the documentation from the PhD students and that. So we legitimise it and we can quantify it. And they're all novel, unique pieces of research that we're doing that aren't being done across industry. We can attribute some of our expenses, so some of our AI costs, some of our shearing costs because of 6-month shearing, some of our scale, some of our labour. We're actually currently running a barber's pole research project here because Dubbo is quite a unique area for barber's pole. Basically, I think it's the worst one in the world because
it'd be a very happy barber's pole country.
Yeah, it's hot, humid, wet consistently for 12 months of the year. So we're actually doing a barber's pole. So we're getting drenched barber vacs. We're doing genomics testing because we're trying to genetically improve worm resistance. So we can attribute up to $300,000 of our on-farm costs to these research projects and then get the tax refund back from that with using this R&D tax incentive.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, it is. And obviously the industry gets, because it's all reported, everyone gets the value out of it. And people can go onto your website and find your newsletters.
Yeah, I'll just Google R&D tax incentive. And if anyone does want a really good specialist tax agent, I can forward on the guy that we use. It's in Brisbane.
Yeah, cool.
He's a guru.
Righto. We better wrap it up. But the last question we ask everyone is what's the last thing you changed your mind about? And you've already told us that you're not afraid to change your mind, so it probably wasn't that hard to think of this. But
yeah, again, I'll make it shorter than these to be, but we were frustrated with commodity prices on farm in 23, 24, and we were thinking what other commodities are there on this farm that we could sell. There's a wind project going on in the area, so we put up a wind detector. We actually probably are the only farm in Australia that does not have enough wind for a wind farm, which is probably a good thing, why lamb survival is so high and things like that. But then we're looking at greening Australia. We're doing tree plantings around we can double fence our boundaries and subdivide up paddocks using the greening Australia stuff and sell the carbon credits from that. And then we started down the soil carbon project path. And to be honest, I thought we were late to the party there, getting into the soil carbon sort of sphere. We did spend about 10 grand just doing due diligence and testing on that. And then we've gone out to a few different companies. But to be honest, I've changed my mind on a soil carbon project at the moment. The risk for reward is too great. there's about 1,500 different companies that do soil carbon at the moment, but all of them have got something tacked onto the side of it. If you use our company, you've got to use our seed dressing. If you use our company, you've got to use our grazing app. If you use our company, you've got to use our agronomy service. If they're all such good projects, why do we need to tack something on the side?
Yeah.
Some of them, they own the ACCUs and you don't own the ACCUs, all the carbon credits out of it.
Yeah, right.
Others, you own 80% and they keep 20%. Look, we got into it. We paid a lot of money to get in it, and we were just about to do baselines. And estimates were about $1.7 million worth of return over 25 years. But you would have to spend $400,000 on wire and water and agronomy, which we're doing anyway. So I think what we're doing on farm is benefiting our soil carbon. We're doing it on our own terms, though, and we will either go forward or back, which we would do in a project, but we're not locked into a project. But seriously, if you divide 1.7 million over 25 years, it's really one labour year. It's not a lot of money returned to you annually. You can do it from one cattle trade or something like that. But
yeah.
I've changed my mind on the soil carbon space just at the moment. I'm not saying don't do it to anyone. Just there's a lot of homework and a lot of research needs to be done if you're going to enter into it. And, I might have just chose a couple of companies that weren't a right fit for us, and there's companies out there. But, yeah, we started going down that path very fast in June, and we put the brakes on. So I've changed my mind at the moment on locking into a soil carbon project.
Excellent. Good time to be a quitter by the sound of it. Even though you've already invested, putting good money after bad doesn't make a lot of sense.
No. So who knows? Who knows what decision is right or wrong there? But I had to do some solid thinking on what it was, and that's the most current thing I've changed my mind on.
Yeah. But it's actually a hard question people often bounce it back at me and I can't answer it very easily. But anyway, we better wrap it up there, Matthew. Thank you very much for your time. There's been some great insights in there for those listening. And it's been, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people can get out of that, and lots of messages around managing staff and how to get on and running big businesses and run them efficiently. But really appreciate you coming along, and look forward to catching up in person.
No worries. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Thanks again to Heinegger, who are proud world leaders in the manufacturing and supply of professional sheep shearing and clipping equipment. Thank you to MNSD Animal Health and Norflex Livestock Intelligence. They offer an extensive livestock product portfolio focused on animal health management, all backed up by exceptional service. We thank both of these companies for their ongoing support of the Head Shepherd podcast.